the blood pooling beneath Elena Brennan's collapsed body on the dusty floorboards of the remote ranch house, was spreading faster than her husband had ever seen anything spread in his entire life. Zachary Quinn dropped to his knees beside her, his work-roughened hands shaking as they hovered over her swollen belly, afraid to touch, afraid to worsen whatever had gone so terribly wrong in the span of a single heartbeat. "Elena, stay with me," he choked out, his voice cracking with a terror he had never known, not even when facing down rustlers or breaking wild horses or weathering the worst storms the Utah Territory could throw at a man. This was 1878, and their nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, the town of St. George, a grueling 8-mile ride through unforgiving desert terrain, and the only doctor for 50 miles was supposedly out tending to a mining accident up north. Elena's eyes fluttered open, glassy with pain and confusion. "Something is wrong," she whispered, her hand clutching at her stomach. "The baby, Zachary. Something is very wrong." He had sent their ranch hand, old Pete, galloping toward town nearly an hour ago with instructions to bring back Doc Harrison, but Zachary knew with a sinking certainty that help would not arrive in time. The sun was already climbing toward its merciless noon position, and his wife was fading before his eyes. "I am going to ride out and find someone," Zachary said, though the words felt like lies even as they left his mouth. Who would he find in this desolate stretch of red rock and sagebrush? "Just hold on, my love. Please hold on." "There is no time," Elena gasped, her face going even paler. "You cannot leave me alone." Zachary felt his world narrowing to this single point of desperate helplessness. He had built this ranch with his own 2 hands, had tamed this harsh land, had survived everything the frontier could throw at him, and now he was utterly powerless to save the woman who meant more to him than his own life. Then he heard it, the sound of hoofbeats approaching fast, and hope surged through him like lightning. He stumbled to the door, throwing it open to see not Doc Harrison's familiar buggy but a single rider on a paint horse, moving with fluid grace across the desert landscape. As the figure drew closer, Zachary realized it was a woman, dressed in practical riding clothes, her dark hair pulled back in a simple braid. She reined in her horse at the sight of him standing in the doorway. "I saw your ranch hand on the road," she called out, swinging down from her saddle with practiced ease. "He said there was trouble here, a woman in childbirth. I am Evangeline Bradford. I am a midwife." Zachary did not waste time with questions about providence or coincidence. "My wife is bleeding badly," he said, his voice hoarse. "The baby is not due for another 2 weeks, but something has gone wrong." Evangeline grabbed a worn leather bag from her saddle and strode toward the house with the kind of confidence that comes from facing crisis after crisis. She was younger than Zachary had expected, perhaps 24 or 25 to his 29 years, with clear hazel eyes that assessed everything in a single sweeping glance. She brushed past him into the house, and he followed, watching as she dropped to her knees beside Elena. "Hello, Elena," Evangeline said, her voice calm and steady. "My name is Evangeline, and I am going to help you and your baby. Can you tell me when the pain started?" Elena's lips moved, but Zachary could barely hear her response. Evangeline leaned closer, listening intently, her hands already moving over Elena's distended belly with gentle but purposeful touches. "How much blood has she lost?" Evangeline asked Zachary without looking up. "I do not know," he admitted, feeling useless. "She just collapsed, and there was so much blood." Evangeline nodded, her expression serious but not panicked. "I need hot water, clean cloths, and blankets. Move quickly but do not spill the water, and I need you to stay calm. Your wife needs you to be strong right now." The directness of her words cut through Zachary's fog of terror. He moved into action, stoking the fire, setting water to boil, gathering every clean piece of fabric in the house. As he worked, he could hear Evangeline speaking to Elena in low, reassuring tones, explaining what she was doing, what she was checking. "The baby is in distress," Evangeline said when Zachary returned with the first basin of hot water. "And there is tearing that needs to be addressed. This is going to be difficult, but I have seen worse, and I have brought both mother and child through safely. Elena, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Elena nodded weakly, her hand reaching out to clutch at Zachary's. He knelt beside her, pressing his forehead to hers, murmuring words of love and encouragement even as his heart hammered against his ribs. What followed was the longest afternoon of Zachary Quinn's life. Evangeline worked with focused intensity, her hands steady, her instructions clear and precise. She directed Zachary to help position Elena, to hold her shoulders when the pains came, to wipe the sweat from her brow. There was no false comfort in Evangeline's manner, but there was competence and determination that gave Zachary something to hold on to. "The baby is coming now," Evangeline said, her voice rising slightly to cut through Elena's cries of pain. "Elena, I need you to push with the next contraction. Push hard and do not stop until I tell you." Elena bore down with everything she had left, her hand crushing Zachary's, her body arching with effort. Zachary watched Evangeline's face, searching for any sign of hope or despair, and saw only fierce concentration. "Again," Evangeline commanded. "Push again, Elena. The head is almost through." Time seemed to stretch and compress. Zachary lost track of how many times Evangeline called for Elena to push, how many times his wife summoned strength from reserves he did not know existed. Then, suddenly, there was a different sound in the room, a thin wail that cut through everything else. "A boy," Evangeline announced, lifting the tiny, squirming infant. "You have a son." But she did not hand the baby to Elena immediately. Instead, she worked quickly, clearing the child's airways, checking him over with practiced efficiency while Zachary watched, his throat tight with emotion. The baby's cries grew stronger, more insistent, and Evangeline finally smiled. "He is small but strong," she said, wrapping the infant in a clean cloth and placing him on Elena's chest. "Now I need to tend to your wife." Elena's eyes were closed, her breathing shallow, and fear crashed over Zachary again. Evangeline's hands moved swiftly, applying pressure, stitching with neat, careful movements, her brow furrowed in concentration. Blood stained her sleeves, her skirt, but she did not pause. "Talk to her," Evangeline said to Zachary. "Keep her focused on you and the baby." Zachary leaned close to Elena, his voice breaking as he described their son, how perfect he was, how much he looked like her. He told her about all the things they would do together, all the dreams they had shared. And slowly, gradually, Elena's breathing steadied, her color began to return. It was nearly sunset before Evangeline finally sat back, wiping her hands on a cloth. "The bleeding has stopped," she said, and Zachary could hear the exhaustion in her voice. "She is not out of danger yet. The next day or two will tell us if infection sets in, but she has a fighting chance now." Zachary stared at this stranger who had appeared like an answer to a prayer he had not known how to voice. "You saved them both," he said, his voice raw. "You saved my whole world." Evangeline shook her head, a faint smile touching her lips. "I did my job, but your wife is a fighter. She did the hard part." "What can I possibly give you to repay this?" Zachary asked. "Name your price. Anything I have is yours." Evangeline looked startled by the intensity in his voice. "I do not do this for payment," she said quietly. I do it because women need help bringing life into this world, and there are too few people willing or able to provide it. Even so, Zachary insisted, you have to let me do something. You have to let me thank you properly. Let me stay until I am certain Elena is stable, Evangeline said. That is thanks enough. I will need to check on her throughout the night, make sure the bleeding does not resume, make sure the baby is nursing properly. Zachary nodded quickly. Of course. Stay as long as you need. I will prepare the spare room. As night fell over the ranch, Zachary found himself watching Evangeline work with a kind of awe he had rarely felt. She moved between checking Elena's bandages, helping position the baby to nurse, showing Zachary how to support his wife's weakened body. She seemed tireless, though he could see the shadows of fatigue under her eyes. When did you last eat? He asked her around midnight, when Elena and the baby were both finally sleeping peacefully. Evangeline looked up from washing her hands, seeming surprised by the question. This morning, I think. It does not matter. It does matter, Zachary said firmly. He heated soup that their cook had left before taking the weekend to visit her sister, and he set a bowl in front of Evangeline with the kind of insistence that would not be argued with. You cannot care for others if you do not care for yourself. She ate slowly, and Zachary sat across from her at the rough-hewn kitchen table, studying her properly for the first time. In the lamplight, he could see that she was beautiful in an understated way, with strong features and intelligent eyes. There was something self-contained about her, as if she was used to relying only on herself. How did you become a midwife? He asked, partly from genuine curiosity and partly to keep her from falling asleep right there at the table. Evangeline was quiet for a moment, her spoon pausing halfway to her mouth. My mother was a midwife in Missouri, she said finally. I learned from watching her, helping her. When she died, I continued the work. I moved out here 3 years ago because I heard there was desperate need for midwives in the territories. You are not married. The question came out before Zachary could think better of it, and he felt heat rise in his face. I am sorry, that was inappropriate. But Evangeline did not seem offended. No, I am not married. My work does not leave much room for that kind of life. I am always traveling, always being called to one emergency or another. It would not be fair to ask someone to accept that. Zachary thought about his own life before Elena had come into it, the loneliness of this isolated existence. It must be hard, he said quietly, always caring for others, never having anyone to care for you. Something flickered in Evangeline's eyes, there and gone too quickly to name. We all make our choices, she said. I have made mine. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the quiet broken only by the occasional crackle of the fire and the distant howl of a coyote. When Evangeline finally rose to check on Elena again, Zachary followed, and together they stood looking down at his sleeping wife and newborn son. Thank you, Elena whispered without opening her eyes. Thank you for saving us. Evangeline touched Elena's hand gently. Rest now. You need to rebuild your strength. Over the next 3 days, Evangeline remained at the ranch, monitoring Elena's recovery with unwavering attention. Zachary found himself drawn to her presence, grateful beyond measure, but also intrigued by this capable, self-sufficient woman who had appeared in his life at the moment of his greatest need. He watched her teach Elena how to manage the pain of healing, how to recognize signs of infection, how to properly care for the baby. She was patient but firm, expecting Elena to push herself to recover without coddling her. And Elena responded to this approach, growing stronger each day. You are a good teacher, Zachary observed on the 3rd evening when he found Evangeline checking her supplies in preparation to leave the next morning. I have had a lot of practice, she replied, repacking her bag with meticulous care. Most women have questions, fears. It helps to have someone who can answer them honestly. Will you come back? The question surprised even Zachary. To check on them, I mean, to make sure everything continues well. Evangeline hesitated, and Zachary could see the conflict in her expression. I have other patients who need me, she said slowly. But yes, I can return in a week to examine Elena and the baby, just to be certain. Relief flooded through Zachary, though he was not entirely sure why her agreement mattered so much beyond the obvious concern for Elena's health. When Evangeline rode out the next morning, Zachary stood watching until she disappeared into the shimmer of heat rising from the desert floor. Elena, propped up in bed with their son in her arms, called to him. She is remarkable, is she not? Elena said when Zachary came to sit beside her. She saved your life, Zachary replied simply. I saw how you looked at her, Elena said, and there was something knowing in her smile that made Zachary uncomfortable. I am grateful to her, he protested. Nothing more. Elena just smiled and turned her attention back to the baby. But Zachary found himself thinking about Evangeline Bradford far more than he should over the days that followed. True to her word, Evangeline returned a week later. She examined Elena thoroughly, pronouncing her recovery excellent, and checked the baby with the same careful attention. You are both doing wonderfully, she said, a note of satisfaction in her voice. Elena, you can begin resuming normal activities gradually. Listen to your body, rest when you need to, but do not be afraid to move around. Will you stay for supper? Elena asked. Please, I feel I have barely had a chance to really talk to you to thank you properly. Evangeline looked as if she might refuse, but something in Elena's expression seemed to change her mind. I suppose I could stay for a short while, she agreed. That evening, sitting around the table together, felt almost comfortable. Elena asked Evangeline about her work, about the women she had helped, and Evangeline shared stories that were by turns harrowing and heartwarming. Zachary found himself laughing at her dry observations about human nature, moved by her obvious dedication to her calling. You should visit more often, Elena said as Evangeline prepared to leave. Not as a midwife, but as a friend. We are so isolated out here, and it would mean so much to have a woman to talk to occasionally. Evangeline looked genuinely touched by the invitation. I travel a great deal, she said hesitantly, but when I am in the area, I would be glad to visit. And she did visit, though not as frequently as Elena would have liked. Every few weeks, she would appear at the ranch, usually with a legitimate reason, checking on Elena and the baby they had named Zachary Jr., called Little Zach to avoid confusion. But she would stay longer each time, accepting Elena's invitations to share meals, to rest before continuing her travels. Zachary found himself looking forward to these visits with an intensity that troubled him. He was a married man, devoted to his wife, yet he could not deny the pull he felt toward Evangeline Bradford. It was not just gratitude, though that was certainly part of it. It was her strength, her independence, the way she moved through the world with such purpose and competence. He told himself it was admiration, nothing more. Elena was his wife, the mother of his child, and he loved her. These feelings for Evangeline were simply the result of the dramatic circumstances of their meeting, a natural response to the woman who had saved his family. But as summer faded into autumn, and Evangeline's visits became a regular feature of their lives, Zachary could not shake the growing awareness that something was shifting, something he did not fully understand and could not control. It was Elena who finally forced the truth into the open. Winter had arrived, bringing cold winds and occasional snow to the high desert. Little Zach was 6 months old, thriving and healthy. Evangeline had stopped by on her way back from a difficult birth, in one of the outlying settlements, and Elena had insisted she stay the night rather than risk traveling in the dropping temperatures. After supper, when Evangeline had gone to the spare room to rest, Elena turned to Zachary with an expression he could not read. "We need to talk," she said quietly. Zachary felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. "About what?" "About Evangeline," Elena said. "About the way you look at her and the way she looks at you." Zachary started to protest, but Elena held up her hand. "Let me finish. When Evangeline saved my life, she gave me the most precious gift anyone could give. She gave me a future with you and our son. But Zachary, I need you to hear what I am about to say, and I need you to really listen." She took a deep breath, and Zachary saw tears in her eyes. "I love you with everything I am. You have been a wonderful husband, but I can see that something has changed. Maybe it changed that very first day when you saw Evangeline appear like a miracle in our darkest hour. Maybe it has been growing slowly all these months, but I can see it, and I think you can too, even if you do not want to admit it." "Elena, I would never betray you," Zachary said, his voice rough with emotion. "Never." "I know," Elena said softly. "And that is what makes this so hard, because I can see that you care for her, Zachary, more than just gratitude, more than friendship. And I can see that she cares for you too, though she fights it just as hard as you do." Zachary sat down heavily, his head in his hands. "I do not know what you want me to say. I chose you. We have a life together, a child together. And we always will," Elena said. She moved to kneel in front of him, taking his hands in hers. "Zachary, I am not angry. I am not hurt. I am trying to tell you that I see the truth and I understand it. The truth is that my heart has not been the same since the birth. The truth is that I almost died that day and something in me changed. I love you, but I am not in love with you the way I once was. And I think if you are honest with yourself, you will admit the same." Zachary stared at her, unable to process what he was hearing. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that we both deserve to be truly happy," Elena said gently. "I am saying that I release you from your vows to me. I am saying that you should be with Evangeline if she will have you." "That is insane," Zachary said, pulling his hands away. "We are married. We have a child. You cannot just release me from my vows." "I can, and I am," Elena said firmly. "Zachary, I need you to understand something. When I was lying there bleeding, when I thought I was going to die, all I could think about was how unfair it was that we had married for practical reasons rather than passionate love. We were friends who became something more because it made sense, because we both wanted families and security. And we have been happy, truly happy. But neither of us has ever experienced the kind of love that sets your soul on fire, and now you have a chance at that. We both do." "Who is going to give you that kind of love?" Zachary asked, feeling lost and confused. Elena smiled a little sadly. "I do not know yet. Maybe no one. But maybe someone will come along someday, and I want to be free to find out, just as I want you to be free to find out what you and Evangeline could be together." They talked late into the night around and around the same points, but Elena would not be swayed. She had clearly been thinking about this for months, and she had made up her mind. Finally, exhausted and emotionally wrung out, Zachary agreed to at least consider what she was proposing. "But what about little Zach?" he asked. "What about our son? We will always be his parents," Elena said. "Both of us. That does not change. We will figure out the details, but I want him to grow up knowing that his parents cared enough about each other to let each other go when the time was right." The next morning, Evangeline emerged from the spare room to find an atmosphere of awkward tension. Zachary could barely meet her eyes, and Elena was determinedly cheerful in a way that felt forced. "Is everything all right?" Evangeline asked, her perceptive gaze moving between them. "Actually, "There is something we need to discuss with you," Elena said, "but not before breakfast. Sit down, and I will get the coffee." Over the meal, Elena laid out what she had told Zachary the night before. Evangeline went very still, her face unreadable. "You are telling me that you want to end your marriage so that Zachary and I can be together," Evangeline said slowly when Elena finished. "Based on what exactly? Some looks you think you have observed." "Based on the fact that I can see the truth," Elena said calmly. "And based on the fact that I want all of us to be happy, truly happy. Not just content or comfortable, but full of joy and passion and purpose." Evangeline stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. "This is absurd. You do not dissolve a marriage on a whim, especially when there is a child involved. What you are suggesting would cause a scandal that would affect all of us." "I am not suggesting we do anything hasty," Elena said. "Divorce is legal in Utah territory, though it takes time. We could say that we have grown apart, that we married too young. People will talk, but they always talk. What matters is that we are making the choice that is right for us." "And what about what is right for little Zach?" Evangeline demanded. "He deserves to grow up in a stable home with both parents." "He will still have both parents," Zachary said, finding his voice at last. "Elena and I will make sure of that. But Evangeline, I need to know something. Is Elena right? Do you have feelings for me?" The silence that followed was deafening. Evangeline stood frozen, her hands clenched at her sides. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "What I feel or do not feel is irrelevant," she said. "I will not be responsible for breaking up a family." "You would not be breaking up anything," Elena said gently. "We are already broken in a way, we just have not wanted to admit it. Evangeline, please sit down. Let us talk about this honestly." Slowly, Evangeline sank back into her chair. She looked shaken, vulnerable in a way Zachary had never seen her. "I cannot afford to have feelings," she said finally. "My work is my life. I go where I am needed when I am needed. I have watched too many women trapped by marriage, losing themselves in service to husbands and children. I swore I would never let that happen to me." "And yet you have feelings anyway," Elena said softly. "Do you not?" Evangeline's hands trembled as she lifted her coffee cup. "Yes," she whispered. "Heaven help me, yes, but that does not mean I should act on them. It does not mean I should disrupt lives and cause pain just because I am selfish enough to want something for myself." "It is not selfish to want love," Zachary said, reaching across the table. Evangeline pulled her hand back before he could touch it, shaking her head. "You do not understand what you are asking," she said. "Even if Elena truly wants this, even if we pursued it, what kind of life could we have? I would still need to continue my work. I cannot stop being a midwife. Women depend on me." "I would never ask you to stop," Zachary said. "I have seen what your work means to you. I have seen the lives you save. I would be proud to be married to a woman who does what you do." "Married," Evangeline repeated, the word seeming to startle her. "You are talking about marriage." "Eventually, yes," Zachary said. "If that is what we both wanted. But first, Elena and I need to legally end our marriage, and you and I need to take time to see if what we feel is real and lasting." Evangeline stood again, pacing to the window. "This is moving too fast. It is too much." "Then take your time," Elena said. "Go back to your work. Think about what you want. Zachary and I will begin the process of separating legally, but that will take months anyway. When you are ready, if you are ever ready, you will know where to find us." Evangeline left that afternoon, riding away with what looked like her whole world on her shoulders. Zachary watched her go with a mixture of hope and despair, wondering if they would ever see her again. The winter months that followed were among the strangest of Zachary's life. He and Elena settled into a new pattern, more like friendly roommates than husband and wife. They cared for little Zach together, ran the ranch together, but there was a distance between them that had not been there before. It was not unpleasant exactly, but it was different. Elena filed for divorce in early spring, claiming irreconcilable differences. The local gossip mill went into overdrive, but Elena faced it with her head held high, refusing to offer explanations or apologies. Some of their neighbors were scandalized, others sympathetic. Zachary found he cared less than he had expected about public opinion. What he cared about was the absence of Evangeline Bradford from their lives. Months passed with no word from her, and Zachary began to wonder if they had frightened her off permanently. The thought filled him with a grief he had not anticipated. It was late May, nearly a year after Evangeline had first appeared in their lives, when she rode up to the ranch again. Zachary was mending a fence, and he looked up at the sound of hoofbeats, his heart lurching at the sight of her. She looked thinner, tired, but there was something different in her eyes, something softer, more open. "Hello, Zachary," she said, dismounting with her usual grace. "Evangeline." He could barely speak around the tightness in his throat. "I did not think we would see you again." "I needed time to think," she said. "To be sure. I have spent the last months traveling, working, and thinking about what I want from my life, and I have reached some conclusions." "And what are those conclusions?" Zachary asked, hardly daring to hope. "That I am tired of being alone," Evangeline said simply. "That I am tired of pretending I do not need anyone. That I want to see if what I feel for you is real, and if we can build something together that honors both your responsibilities and my calling." Zachary set down his tools and moved toward her slowly, giving her every opportunity to step back. But she did not step back. She stood her ground, her eyes locked on his. "I am still afraid," she admitted. "Afraid of losing myself, afraid of failing you. Afraid of taking on a responsibility I am not equipped for." "What responsibility?" Zachary asked. "Being a stepmother to little Zach," Evangeline said. "I have never been a mother. I have delivered hundreds of babies, but I have never raised one. What if I am terrible at it?" "Then you will learn," Zachary said. "The same way Elena and I have been learning. The same way every parent learns, and you will not be alone in it. Elena wants to remain part of his life. We will all figure it out together." Evangeline took a shaky breath. "The divorce is final." "As of 2 weeks ago," Zachary confirmed. "Elena has moved into a house in St. George. She takes little Zach 2 days a week, and I have him the rest of the time. It is working well. He is happy, healthy, and loved by both of us." "And you?" Evangeline asked. "Are you happy?" Zachary considered the question seriously. "I am content," he said. "I have my son, my ranch, my health. But I have not been truly happy, no, because the woman I have come to love is not in my life." Evangeline's breath caught. "You love me." "I have loved you since the day you rode into my life and saved everything that mattered to me," Zachary said. "I have loved you through every visit, every conversation, every moment I have watched you care for others with such dedication and skill. I love your strength, your independence, your refusal to settle for less than what you believe is right. I love you, Evangeline Bradford, and I will spend the rest of my life proving it to you if you will let me." Tears were streaming down Evangeline's face, and she made no effort to wipe them away. "I love you too," she said. "I have fought it, denied it, run from it, but I love you. I love your kindness, your strength, the way you look at me like I am something precious. I love the father you are to your son. I love the man you are." Zachary closed the distance between them and pulled her into his arms. She came willingly, wrapping her arms around him and burying her face in his shoulder. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other while the spring wind whispered across the desert. When they finally pulled apart, Zachary cupped her face in his hands. "We can take this as slow as you need," he said. There is no rush. We can court properly, give ourselves time to be sure. Evangeline smiled through her tears. I have never been courted before, she admitted. I do not even know what that would look like. Then we will figure it out together, Zachary said. Everything we do from this point forward, we do together. They did take their time, though not as much as either of them had expected. Evangeline continued her work as a midwife, but she began making the Quinn ranch her base of operations. She kept her room there, stored her supplies there, and returned there between calls. Slowly, carefully, they built a relationship that was unlike anything either of them had experienced before. Zachary courted her with quiet gestures, bringing her wildflowers from the desert, cooking meals for her when she came home exhausted from a difficult birth, rubbing her feet when they ached from long hours. Evangeline courted him right back, teaching him things about the world that she had learned in her travels, sharing her thoughts and dreams with him late into the night, showing him slowly how to break down the walls she had built around her heart. And little Zach took to Evangeline with an ease that surprised them all. Perhaps he sensed that this was the woman who had saved his mother's life, or perhaps he simply responded to the genuine affection she showed him. Either way, within months, he was reaching for her as readily as he reached for Zachary, calling her Eva in his baby babble and falling asleep in her arms. Elena watched this blossoming relationship with satisfaction and her own quiet happiness. She had found work in St. George as a seamstress, a skill she had always possessed but never had time to fully develop. She was building a life of her own, making friends, finding joy in her independence. When she visited the ranch to see little Zach, the four adults would often share meals together, and gradually the awkwardness faded into something that felt like genuine friendship. I am glad you two found each other, Elena told Evangeline one afternoon while the men were outside working. I am glad I was brave enough to speak up when I saw what was happening. I am glad too, Evangeline said softly, though I confess I still sometimes feel guilty as if I stole him from you. You did not steal anything, Elena said firmly. I gave him to you freely, knowing it was the right thing for all of us. And I gave myself freedom at the same time. Do not diminish that gift by feeling guilty about it. In September of 1879, more than a year after their unconventional beginning, Zachary Quinn and Evangeline Bradford were married in a small ceremony in St. George. Elena was there, holding little Zach, smiling genuinely as she watched her former husband pledge his life to the woman who had saved her. The local community had largely accepted the unusual situation, particularly those who had witnessed Evangeline's skill and dedication as a midwife. She had earned respect through her actions, and Zachary was known as a good man who had handled a difficult situation with grace and integrity. Their wedding night was spent at the ranch, in the room that had become theirs. Zachary was gentle and patient, aware that Evangeline was nervous about this aspect of marriage. But she had never been one to shy away from challenges, and she approached this new intimacy with the same courage she brought to everything else in her life. Afterward, lying in Zachary's arms, Evangeline felt a peace she had never known. I never thought I would have this, she whispered. A husband who loves me, a home, a child to care for. I thought my calling meant giving up these things. Your calling is part of who you are, Zachary said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I would never want you to give it up. We will make it work. When you are called out to help a woman, I will manage things here. When you need support, I will be there. We are partners in all things now, and they were. Over the years that followed, Evangeline continued her work as a midwife, bringing new life into the world across the Utah Territory and beyond. But she always came home to the ranch, to Zachary and little Zach, and eventually to the children they had together. Their first child together was born in the spring of 1881, a daughter they named Catherine, called Kate. Evangeline labored at home with Zachary by her side and Elena attending as her midwife, a beautiful full-circle moment that brought tears to everyone's eyes. "She is perfect," Elena said, placing the squalling infant in Evangeline's arms. "You did beautifully." "Thank you," Evangeline gasped, exhausted and elated, "for everything, for all of this." Little Zach, now 3 years old, was fascinated by his new baby sister. He would sit beside Evangeline for hours, watching Kate sleep, asking endless questions about babies. It became clear early on that he had inherited Evangeline's interest in the medical aspects of birth and healing. Their second child together came 2 years later, another boy they named William, called Will. And 2 years after that, twin girls, Josephine and Margaret, called Josie and Maggie. The ranch house expanded to accommodate the growing family, and Zachary hired additional hands to help manage the work when Evangeline was called away. Elena remained a constant presence in their lives, particularly close to little Zach, but beloved by all the children as an aunt figure. As the years passed, little Zach grew into a young man with a passion for medicine. At 15, he began accompanying Evangeline on her midwifery calls, learning from her just as she had learned from her own mother. It was clear that he would carry on her legacy. "You have given him such an incredible gift," Elena told Evangeline one evening when they were watching Zach carefully stitch a cut on one of the ranch hand's arms under Evangeline's supervision. "He was always meant for this," Evangeline said. "I just helped him find his path." In 1895, when Zachary was 46 and Evangeline was 42, they decided it was time to slow down. Little Zach, now 17, was preparing to go east to formal medical school, a dream that Evangeline and Zachary had saved for years to make possible. The other children were growing rapidly, needing more attention and stability. Evangeline made the difficult decision to limit her midwifery practice to the immediate area around St. George, taking only the most urgent cases further afield. It was time, she said, to let the next generation take up the work. Several young women had apprenticed with her over the years, and they were ready to serve the wider community. "You regret it?" Zachary asked her one night as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Giving up the traveling, the constant work, Evangeline was quiet for a long moment, considering. "No," she said finally, "I do not regret it. I have had an extraordinary life. I have brought hundreds of babies into this world. I have saved countless mothers. I have trained others to carry on the work. And I have had something I never thought I would have, something more precious than all the rest." "What is that?" Zachary asked, though he thought he knew. "Love," Evangeline said simply. "A family, you. I have had you, Zachary Quinn, and that has made all the difference." Zachary pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her hair. "I am the one who has been blessed," he said. "You appeared in my life when I needed you most, and you have been my anchor, my partner, my love ever since." They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. After a while, they could hear the sounds of their children inside, Kate helping Will with his arithmetic, while Josie and Maggie argued about something in their twin language that no one else could fully understand. "You remember that day?" Evangeline asked softly. "The day we met?" "Every moment," Zachary said. "I remember the terror, the helplessness, and then you appeared like a miracle. I remember watching you work, thinking I had never seen anyone so brave, so competent. I remember falling in love with you right then, though I did not have words for it yet. I remember thinking you were the most devoted husband I had ever seen," Evangeline said. "The way you looked at Elena, the desperation in your eyes. I remember being moved by it and also a little envious. I never expected to inspire that kind of devotion in anyone. But you do, Zachary said fiercely. You inspire it in me every single day. The way you move through the world, the way you care for others, the way you have opened your heart to me and our children even though it scared you. You are the most remarkable woman I have ever known. Evangeline turned to face him, her eyes shining in the lamplight spilling from the windows. When you said name your price that day, I could not have imagined that the price would be this. My heart, my life, my future, and I could not have imagined how willing I would be to pay it. I would pay it 1,000 times over, Zachary said, cupping her face in his hands. Every moment with you has been worth everything. They kissed then, a gentle affirmation of everything they had built together, everything they had overcome, everything they still had to look forward to. Inside, Kate called out, "Mama, Papa, supper is ready." Laughing, they rose and went inside to their family, their home, their life together. The years continued to roll by, bringing changes and challenges as they always do. Little Zach graduated from medical school and returned to Utah, opening a practice in St. George that combined traditional doctoring with midwifery, a revolutionary approach that he had learned from Evangeline. He married a kind young woman named Sarah, and they gave Zachary and Evangeline their first grandchildren. Kate became a teacher, following her passion for education and bringing literacy to the growing communities of southern Utah. Will took over the primary management of the ranch, showing a natural talent for animal husbandry and land management. The twins, Josie and Maggie, remained inseparable, opening a bakery together in St. George that became famous for its pies and pastries. Elena, now in her late 50s, eventually remarried, finding love with a widowed shopkeeper who adored her and treated her with the devotion she deserved. She remained close to all of them, a cherished part of the extended family they had built together. On a warm evening in the spring of 1905, Zachary and Evangeline celebrated their 26th wedding anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and friends. The ranch that had once been a lonely outpost in the desert had become the heart of a thriving family, a place of love and laughter and life. As the party wound down and the last guests departed, Zachary and Evangeline found themselves once again on the porch, watching the sunset. 26 years, Evangeline mused. More than a quarter-century since that day you told me to name my price. And have you, Zachary asked with a smile, named your price? Evangeline looked around at the home they had built, the life they had created, the love they had nurtured. My price was you, she said softly. Your heart, your partnership, your unwavering support of who I am and what I need to do. My price was this family, these children and grandchildren, this home. My price was the chance to be fully myself and fully loved at the same time. And you have paid it in full, Zachary Quinn. Every single day you have paid it in full. Zachary pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. Around them, the desert bloomed with spring wildflowers. The air was sweet with the scent of sage and possibility, and the future stretched out before them like the endless Utah sky. I love you, Zachary said, the words as fresh and true as they had been the first time he spoke them. I love you too, Evangeline replied, today, tomorrow, and always. As darkness fell and the stars emerged one by one, they sat together in perfect contentment. Two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a love strong enough to weather any storm, who had created a legacy that would outlast them both. The midwife who had saved a life had found her own life saved in return, not from physical danger, but from the loneliness and isolation she had thought was her destiny. The cowboy, who had been willing to pay any price for his family's salvation, had discovered that the greatest gift was not something he could purchase, but something freely given: the love of an extraordinary woman who had chosen him, chosen their life together, chosen to stay. And in the end, that choice, made and remade every day for more than a quarter century, had been the most valuable thing of all. It had been the foundation on which they built not just a marriage but a family, not just a home but a legacy, not just a life but a love story that would be told for generations to come. As they finally rose to go inside, Zachary paused and looked back at the desert landscape, now silvered by moonlight. This harsh, beautiful land had witnessed their beginning, had challenged them, had shaped them. And it would be here long after they were gone, a silent testament to the truth that love, real love, can flourish even in the most unlikely places. Hand in hand, they walked into their home, into the warmth and light and love that waited for them there, into the rest of their lives together. The door closed behind them, but their story continued, woven into the very fabric of the land they loved and the family they had built. Years later, when their grandchildren asked them about how they fell in love, Zachary and Evangeline would tell the story together, finishing each other's sentences, laughing at the memories, marveling at the unlikely chain of events that had brought them together. "Your grandmother appeared like an angel when I needed her most," Zachary would say. "Your grandfather offered me anything I wanted," Evangeline would add. "And what she wanted was us," Zachary would finish, gesturing to their family, their life, everything they had built together. The grandchildren would listen wide-eyed, then run off to play, taking for granted the love that surrounded them, not yet understanding how rare and precious it was. But Zachary and Evangeline understood. Every single day they understood and were grateful. In the summer of 1912, as they approached their 33rd anniversary, Zachary fell ill with pneumonia. Despite Evangeline's best efforts and little Zach's medical expertise, he weakened rapidly. On a warm July evening, surrounded by his wife and children, Zachary Quinn took his last breath. Evangeline held his hand through it all, her face wet with tears but her voice steady as she told him over and over how much she loved him, how grateful she was for every moment they had shared, how he had made her life complete. After he was gone, she sat with him for a long time, memorizing his face, remembering their years together, feeling the weight of her grief, but also the immense gratitude for having known such love. At Zachary's funeral, Evangeline stood tall and dry-eyed, accepting condolences with grace. But that night, alone in the bed they had shared for more than 3 decades, she finally allowed herself to weep. Elena, now 73 herself, came to stay with Evangeline for several weeks, caring for her friend the way Evangeline had once cared for her. They sat together in the evenings, reminiscing about Zachary, about the strange and beautiful path their lives had taken. "He loved you so much," Elena said one evening. "Right from the start, I saw it before either of you did." "I know," Evangeline said softly, "and I loved him. I still love him. I always will." "Do you regret anything?" Elena asked. "Any of it?" Evangeline thought for a long moment. "I regret that we did not have more time," she said finally. "But I do not regret a single moment we did have. He gave me everything I never knew I needed. He showed me that I could be strong and independent and still be loved. He taught me that I did not have to choose between my calling and having a family. He was the best man I ever knew, and I was blessed to be his wife." Evangeline lived for another 11 years after Zachary's death, remaining active and sharp until the very end. She continued to assist with births when called upon, though she no longer took on the primary responsibility. She delighted in her grandchildren, and eventually her great-grandchildren, telling them stories about their grandfather and the legacy he had left. On a spring morning in 1923, Evangeline Bradford Quinn passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 70. Her children gathered to lay her to rest beside Zachary in the small cemetery overlooking St. George, the red rocks rising majestically in the distance. Little Zach, now a distinguished physician in his mid-40s, spoke at her funeral, his voice breaking with emotion as he described the woman who had saved his mother's life and then become his second mother, his teacher, his inspiration. "She taught me that the greatest calling in life is to serve others," he said. "But she also taught me that service does not require sacrifice of self. She showed me that it is possible to follow your passion, to do meaningful work, and still have deep, abiding love in your life." She and my father built something remarkable together, not despite their unconventional beginning, but because of it. They chose each other every single day, and that choice created a legacy that will live on through all of us. As the mourners departed, Elena remained behind, leaning on her cane, looking down at the graves of the two people who had shaped her life so profoundly. She was 94 now, frail but still clear-minded, and she had outlived both of them. "Thank you," she whispered to their memory. "Thank you for being brave enough to be honest. Thank you for showing me that love can take many forms, and that sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is letting them go. Thank you for the family we all built together. Thank you for everything." She placed wildflowers on both graves, desert blooms that Evangeline had always loved, and then turned to where little Zach waited to help her to the wagon. "They had a good life, did they not?" she asked him. "They had an extraordinary life," little Zach replied. "Because they were extraordinary people who loved each other extraordinarily well." And that was the truth of it, the simple, profound truth that would echo through the generations of the family Zachary and Evangeline had built together. They had loved extraordinarily well, with honesty and courage and unwavering commitment. They had created something beautiful from an impossible situation, something lasting from a desperate moment. The ranch continued to thrive, passed down through the Quinn family, a testament to Zachary's hard work and vision. Little Zach's medical practice became one of the most respected in southern Utah, a monument to Evangeline's dedication to healing. Their other children carried forward the values they had been taught, spreading love and kindness and integrity through their own families and communities. And on quiet evenings, when the desert wind whispered across the red rocks and the stars emerged in the vast Utah sky, those who remembered could almost feel the presence of Zachary and Evangeline still together, still watching over the legacy they had built, still proof that true love, born from the most unlikely circumstances, can endure forever. The story of the midwife who saved a life and the cowboy who said, "Name your price," became a legend in southern Utah, passed down through generations as an example of courage, unconventional wisdom, and the transformative power of love. But for those who had known them, who had been shaped by their love and their choices, it was more than a legend. It was the foundation of everything they were, everything they believed, everything they hoped to pass on to their own children. In the end, Evangeline Bradford Quinn had named her price, and Zachary Quinn had paid it gladly. The price had been love, partnership, respect, and the freedom to be fully herself within the safety of their bond. And in return, she had given him the same, creating a union that was truly equal, truly loving, truly remarkable in every way. Their love story began with blood and fear and a desperate plea for help. But it had grown into something beautiful and enduring, a testament to the truth that love can bloom even in the harshest conditions, that families can be built in unconventional ways, and that the greatest gifts are often the ones we never knew we needed. As the years turned into decades and the decades into a century, the Quinn family continued to grow and thrive, carrying forward the lessons Zachary and Evangeline had taught through their lives and their love. And though the world changed dramatically, though the Wild West became memory and legend, the truth of their story remained constant. That love, real love, the kind that transforms lives and creates legacies, is always worth any price, always worth the risk, always worth choosing every single day for as long as life allows. And so their story ended not with goodbye but with legacy, not with loss but with lasting impact, not with regret but with gratitude for every moment, every choice, every act of courage that had brought them together and kept them together through all the years they had been blessed to share. They had lived fully, loved deeply, and left behind a family and a community that would carry their memory forward for generations to come. A living testament to the enduring power of love born from the most desperate need and the most generous response. Love that had changed everything for everyone it touched. Love that would never, ever be forgotten.